Welcome to the fourth episode of the Time Bets Overvlog. I'm Tyler, and today we're going to go over a 2-5 session we played at the Best Bet in Orange Park, Florida. In the last episode, we played at the Best Bet in Jacksonville, and for this one, we're hoping to get some redemption for a horrible play on the live stream. Okay, let's get to it. The first thing I notice at this table is there's a few players that seem to be a bit friendly, like they play together a lot. They know each other well, and I think they know each other's play style. When I run into tables like this, I just try to listen and get as much information as I can. These guys will say things like, "Oh yeah, I remember when you played that hand," and they can give you some information, or they say, "You don't play anything but the nuts." So anyways, we're dealt king-queen under the gun with the straddle on. I don't typically like to play an under the gun straddle, but when the whole table is straddling, I don't really mind. Middle position raises to $40. The cutoff calls and it folds to us. This hand is at the higher end of my range for a straddle, and rather than playing out of position versus two opponents, I decide I'm going to try to isolate one of the players. I put in the 3-bet to 135, and unfortunately, both players call.
Raise 135.
135.
We go to a flop of 7-8-3, 2 hearts. I check, middle position C bets for $100. The cutoff goes all in, and we fold. Both players end up all in. One has pocket jacks, and the other ace-10 suited. It runs out with 3 hearts, and ace-10 takes it down with the nut flush. Right away, I'm also learning this game is going to be pretty good. An over later, we're dealt 2 red pocket queens in the small blind. It folds to the button, and he opens at $10. This is a small sizing. Looks like he's nowhere near the top of his range, but wants to charge the blinds. I put in a small 3-bet to $40, thinking it will be enough to get the big blind to fold, so we can go heads up versus the button's weak range.
Raise.
The big blind ends up making the flat call, which priced the button in, so he also makes the call. 3 ways to a flop. It comes jack high with 2 spades. We lead for $50, and the big blind goes all in for $150. This is an easy call for only 100 more, seeing that we have an overpair. Although with 2 spades on the board, it's likely my opponent is on the flush draw. The turn comes another spade, and the river comes the ace of spades. I flip over my hand thinking I'm completely dead, and our opponent immediately mucks. Don't ask me how, but somehow our overpair held up. We get dealt pocket 7s on the button, 2 limpers. I think the best option in this spot is to put in a raise, but I elect to limp, hoping that one of the 2 aggressive players on my left decide to go for the squeeze. The small blind limps and the big blind goes for the raise of $30. One of the limpers folds, we call, and the small blind calls. 4 ways to a flop of king 5-6 with 2 clubs. The small blind checks, and the big blind C bets for $50. Middle position folds, we flat, and the small blind comes in with the check shove for $160. Big blind takes his time as I mull over my stack as if I might call or raise. This doesn't affect him at all, and he just makes the flat call. In this spot, I know at best I'm drawing to only 2 outs. Most likely I'm up against a king or a flush draw. I get out of the way and let the two of them battle it out. The turn comes an offsuit 10, and the river comes another 6. Big blind shows pocket kings for the flop top set and the river boat. The player on my left, who was a small blind, has busted over 3 times this session already, and we haven't played that many hands yet. He decides to buy in yet again for the minimum because he loves pain. The next hand has a straddle back on, and we're on the button this time and look down at King 5 suited. We end up flat calling the straddle for $10, and the small blind flats, and the big blind goes for the squeeze of $50. The under the gun player makes the flat call, and it folds to us, so we decide to see a flop. And now, everyone, since we have a bottom of the range starting hand, I'm going to need some help. So since we have King 5, let's go for 5 likes in this video so we can smash this flop. Okay, ready? Now smash that like button. Holy crap, it worked! The flop comes King 5-5, and we flopped a full house. The only thing I can think of right now is how I don't scare away either of these players and get the most money as possible. The big blind checks. This time, the under the gun straddler bets $50. We try to slow play and keep the big blind in, but he makes the fold. The turn comes a 3. Under the gun bets $50 again. We keep feeding the line and make the flat call with the intention of getting it all in on the river. The river comes the 4 of diamonds, bringing in the front door flush. Our opponent insta-shoves, and we insta-call. I flip over the bad news for under the gun and say,
I flopped the boat.
Then he says, me too.
How's that even happen?
I look at the board and feel my stomach drop. The player flips over pocket kings for the not full house. He had the only combination of pocket kings left and obliterated our hand right on the flop. It looks like the poker gods played a trick on us for not being specific enough, like some kind of genie. Only we were supposed to smash the flop, not both of us. Next time, we're going to have to be more specific. I try to shake this one off, and I start talking to myself, how could that even happen? You know you're in a bad way when your opponent gets you talking to yourself in disbelief. I end up laughing it off while the whole table continues to joke about the hand, which makes it a little easier. We add on for $200, and the very next hand, I look down at Queen Jack off in the cutoff. A few limpers, so we limp and go 5 ways to the flop.
I'm thinking he's got ace king.
Flop comes 8-9-6, checks through to the button, and he bets 25. He gets one caller, and I call. 3-way action to the turn, which comes the 10 of hearts. Oh yeah, redemption time. We've got the nuts, 3-way, middle position checks, and we decide to check since it's likely he'll bet again. He throws out another bet for 45. Middle position flats again, which sets us up for the squeeze play. We keep it on the smaller size in relation to the pot in order to not lose our customers, but also give any heart draws a bad price to call. The button starts complaining that he keeps getting run down, and eventually he throws his hand in the muck face up, showing he flopped 2 pair, even though he has another player to act behind him. The middle position player also ends up making the fold. I end up showing my hand as well, just to show him he had the goods and take it down.
Yeah, that's brutal. That turn, I mean. And you had a blocker to it, too.
Half an over later, we're in the big blind with 10-7 of hearts.
Like 6 people, and then they just put me up there.
3 players limp, The small blind limps, and we check and go 5 players to the flop. The flop comes ace 8-9 with the 8 of hearts and the 9 of hearts, which gives us the open-ended straight flush draw. Small blind leads for 15. We hold our composure and just flat. Under the gun flats, and then an old man coffee down at the other end of the table, who's been playing super tight, decides to put in the squeeze for 135. Back around to the small blind, he announces all in. Seeing these two type of players, there's absolutely no way we're ahead. But with this board texture and our draw to the absolute nuts, there's no way we can fold with so many outs. We announce all in just to make sure we have the old man coffee covered. Everyone folds, and he makes the call. We're 3 ways all in now, and the old men aren't trying to flip over their hands, so I convince them to show their hands so we can all sweat it. Under the gun flopped 2 pair with the ace 8 of diamonds, and the other old man flopped 2 pair with 8-9 suited. This really, for us, is the best case scenario because neither of them have a heart, so our outs are still in the deck. It also makes it more difficult for them to get a full house. We beg and plead the dealer to put out the jack or 6 of hearts so we can win the $1,000 high hand. The turn comes a 10 of spades, and the river comes another brick, the deuce of spades. We can't catch up, and the under the gun player scoops with his 2 pair. We completely airball the turn and the river in a huge pot. But when you calculate the odds on the flop, 10-7 of hearts was actually the favorite versus these 2 holdings. It's unfortunate we couldn't pick up one of our 15 outs for the win. After this, we have to add on for another 400. The next hand isn't quite as crazy. We have ace-10 of spades in the small blind, 4 limpers, we squeeze for 25, and get 1 caller. The flop comes ace-high, we check out of position, other player bets 25, we call. The turn's a queen, and we both check. The river comes a brick, I bet 30 for value, he calls, and we take it down with a pair of aces. Nothing crazy, but at this point, a win is a win. A few hands go by, and finally we look down at something we can work with. Pocket aces. We lead out for 25 and get 2 callers. The flop comes 8-7 king rainbow. We bet $50. One player makes a call and we go heads up to the turn. The turn is a beautiful card. The ace of hearts, giving us top set on a fairly coordinated board. I bet $50 again to add some money in the pot, but just enough to hopefully keep my opponent in. He does end up making the call. We're heads up for one more card, which comes the case ace, giving us quads in a decent sized pot. Our poker genie must have felt bad for crushing our wishes earlier and decided to make up for it. I decided to check for the trap and let my opponent bet the river. The board is extremely wet, and my opponent has to have something if he called 2 streets already. He doesn't end up betting and shows pocket eights for a full house. We show our pocket aces for quads and announce to the dealer we have a high hand.
I got a high hand.
It's not that exciting in the moment because the high hand period just started and our quad aces need to hold up for a whole hour.
Yeah, any straight flush, right?
In the very next hand, we're dealt pocket sevens. The under the gun player has a straddle on, and unfortunately my camera shot got all out of whack as we were stacking our chips, so you can't see what I had. The flop comes 7-8 queen, 2 clubs. We check and middle position bets 70. Then the player on his left raises to 160. We decide not to slow play our set and just go all in to charge a flush draw the maximum. Both players end up making the fold, and I show them I had bottom set. We take down an okay sized pot, which probably could have been bigger if I just made the flat call, but the player to my right says he had an open-ended straight draw and a flush draw, so I think the shove was the best move. So now our stack is starting to recover. We aren't quite unstuck yet, but we're building. The last hand we're going to go over for this session unfortunately wasn't recorded, so I'm going to show you a picture of Kit Kat sleeping on a beanbag chair instead. We start off with some great news. They announced our quad aces held up for the entire hour, and the floor just came over to pay us out the $1,000, which does get us unstuck for the session. We finish signing the paper, and we look down at a couple of Kit Kats in the cutoff, pocket kings. It's somewhat ironic that the player who beat our flop full house with pocket kings opens for $30 in under the gun. Two players make the call, and I put in the raise for $150. It folds back around to under the gun, who decides to shove all in for a little over $300. Both middle position players fold, and we make the call. The player immediately flips over his hand to show us pocket queens. We give him the bad news and show our pocket kings. The dealer knows it's redemption time and deals us a clean run out. We take down our last pot for the evening and decide to rack up and book the win. As far as our play this session, we didn't do that hot, but fortunately for us, we did run pretty well late in the session. Got quad aces for the high hand, one with a set of sevens, pocket kings. We end up booking the win to keep our spirits high after the debacle the night before on the Jacksonville live stream. Alright everyone, if you enjoyed the episode and made it this far, be sure to leave a like and a subscribe because it does really help out the channel. For the next episode, we're going to take a break from the Florida trip and go over a 2-5 session I played this past week at Maryland Live. Be sure to look out for that one. We get into a bunch of big hands and set a player off on tilt, and yeah, it's going to be a good one. So good luck at the tables, and we'll see you in the next episode.